Hi, I'm Harry from One Direction, and this is our autobiography. When I was a kid, I think I was always a bit of a show off. From when I was pretty small, my mum always thought I'd entertain in some way. I think it was from when my sister used to come out of school. I used to like roll the window down and be in my car seat and be like shouting and stuff because I was a show off. Um, but I don't think I really knew exactly what I wanted to do. Um, I never really wanted to do much at school. I wasn't bad at school, just, I just preferred kind of messing around a bit, but I think everyone does, so that's fine. Um, I enjoyed like the performing part of school and stuff more than anything else, so I think that's when I kind of realized that was what I wanted to do more. I think I had quite a nice upbringing. My family was really nice to me, and they're just good. My parents always wanted me to kind of go out and try things, and they never told me like I couldn't do loads of stuff, and they were really supportive all the time. Um, and I think they just, in terms of kind of actually growing up, I think I'm lucky that my parents brought me up that way. I mean, I have no idea what constitutes a good parent, but I think they were pretty good ones. I think if you're a parent, you like set an example by obviously showing your children, and I think my parents never. I've never seen either of my parents like act as if they were ever above anyone, or So I always kind of grew up thinking that everyone was equal and everyone's the same, and it doesn't matter if you kind of have like a really big, amazing job or you clean toilets or whatever, that everyone's kind of the same. I think, like, looking back on the whole X Factor experience, it's amazing to think how young I was thinking back, and when I like look at things about it, I looked like I'm about 12, and I think it's amazing to kind of try and comprehend the fact that I was just like I was a kid, and I think we'll always be so grateful for the opportunity that it gave us, because obviously X Factors is a huge platform, and I think it was it was a show that like I always watched with my family when I was growing up, and watched with friends and stuff, and obviously it was already kind of a big part of it then. It was something that I liked doing, uh, and now obviously it's been had such a huge impact on my life and kind of my family's life, and I think there's a lot of people who kind of come off it and try and get away from it really fast, and I just have no problem kind of acknowledging the fact that that had a huge part in everything. We wouldn't be kind of able to do what we're able to do if it wasn't for X Factor. I think obviously you have to do stuff afterwards, and you have to work really hard and kind of make the most of it. But if we didn't have X Factor, then the door wouldn't have been opened in the first place. I was pretty emotional when we signed the record deal. I remember I was still 16, and every time every time we went in, I was so nervous walking in to the building. I think coming from like quite a small place where it's not that culturally vast, it was like pretty. Everyone was pretty. When you go in at such like a young age and you're working with a songwriter and producer who've done kind of all these amazing songs, and you haven't done anything in a studio, you definitely don't feel comfortable to say like, what if I sing it like this instead? Maybe we should change some stuff. It's like if you're like a kid and you have no idea what you're doing, you're never gonna tell someone who's had a million number ones how a song should be done. So, but at the same time, I think it was right that we did it that way. I think it was important for us to listen and kind of learn and to do what was being asked of us, and then later you kind of take those lessons and try and adapt it from there, rather than just jumping into the deep end and trying to write songs when you have no real idea how it kind of works. So I think we did that in the right way, the first few sessions. By the time our debut single was ready, it was weird. I felt like a sense of responsibility that the song, it was like we'd had so much support from the fans and stuff up to that point. I felt like they'd done so much for us over kind of social media, and it came down to the recording studios and X Factor, and just kind of did obviously so much for us. I think it felt kind of like it was a nervous time, because I felt like it was time for us to kind of give them something back. We hadn't obviously had any of our music yet for them, so it was a big moment to kind of live up to it and kind of give them something. I think we were just praying that people liked it, because if we didn't, they'd be like, oh, right, okay, maybe not, I'll go home. But I think music's just so important. I think every time it's a new album or a new song, you have to kind of earn the support, and the early nerves are still they're still there when we hear kind of new songs going out on the radio for the first time, just like the first time we heard What Makes You Beautiful on the radio. 2011 was a really good year. It was the X Factor tour. There was lots of like promo and interviews and radio stuff all over the place. The single had just gone #1. The album had just gone #2. Thanks, Rihanna. But it was just a crazy period for us, I think, when we started to realise that maybe the band was actually taking off a little bit. By the time we got to the December tour, to kind of support the album, we were still pretty nervous. When I look back, it's kind of hard to think that I was only 17 at the time, and it's weird thinking about how much time has passed, because while it's gone really quick, it kind of also it feels like a long time ago. Like, I feel really young being 20, so thinking back to when I was 17, remembering all the stuff that happened is mad. I think the whole thing's kind of ridiculous when I sit and think about it. Anyone from England going to the States is kind of really excited. I think the nearest feeling I'd had to that first trip was when I first came to London, because when I was growing up, London was like, to me it felt like it was a different country, and that sounds really weird, but it was just like, it seemed so far away. I just felt like I'd never go. And I just loved just the excitement of being somewhere that's filled with kind of things you've seen on TV and in movies and stuff. And I think that's the thing about like America in general, and especially like Hollywood, is you kind of get that feeling every time you go anyway. LA is somewhere that I feel like good being in. I think there's something about waking up to the sunshine. That's probably a massive cliche, but I do like that, and I think it's just a feeling of wanting to kind of get out of bed and kind of be outside, and it makes you want to do stuff. And I think if you're like in England, everyone wants to get outside, and the weather's never good enough, and you're like working in offices and stuff, and I think the thing is there, you have like breakfast and lunch and dinner all outside, so you kind of get your fix of being outside. So when you have to go and do some work, you actually don't mind. And I think it's mainly the weather. Like, even if your car breaks down, you're just kind of chilling in the sun for a bit. It's actually not that bad. The first big shock was when we flew back into the UK. We went on like our first work trip to America, and then we flew back to the UK, and it was into Heathrow, and it was like a really big moment for us, because there was just so many people, and we'd never experienced that before, and it was just it was really intense. We ended up going out in like a riot van, which was probably a little over the top, but it was fun. It's hard to kind of like think to yourself like, oh, this is kind of getting big. I think that's a really weird way of thinking about it. I think the thing that kind of intrigued us about it was just how many interviews we were doing. It was just a lot, and I think we kind of thought if we were doing this many, then the album might kind of be doing something. So I think What Makes You Beautiful went top 30, and that kind of ramped it up another level as well. We did a signing in a shopping mall that was it was just nuts, and it was the first one we'd done over there, and we thought there'd be maybe like 100 people, something like that, and there was just like thousands of people, and it was really surprising, and I think that was kind of when the momentum seemed to kind of snowball a little bit. And then we got a support slot touring with Big Time Rush, which was massive for us because it was so early for us being in the States. It was nice to kind of have the guys having us on stage. And I think on the first night we saw someone wearing a One Direction t-shirt, and we all kind of said, that's wicked. We kind of had no idea. And then they all know the words. They all knew the words to all the songs. And I don't know, it was weird. It was like, even if we didn't, no one would really say it. And even if we didn't really want to believe that it was kind of like that with people wearing t-shirts and stuff, it was just cool because we could kind of feel it. When people kind of sang it, we weren't expecting them to know the words. I think we've always been proud of the live shows that we put on, and I think with things that were kind of happening in the charts, I think we'd seen the album kind of doing well in different countries and stuff, and I think it was really important that we went out and kind of proved ourselves a bit. I think we wanted to kind of get out and perform the record to the fans who'd got it and the fans who liked it, and it was just kind of important for us to kind of justify why it was number one. I kind of, if you have an album that's number one and then the show's awful, it's a bit like, So I think for us, we just wanted to put on a show where people would come and say, even if you're not a massive fan of the band, you can leave and kind of say, that's a good show. The bit I found difficult early on was I used to get really nervous before stage, and there was one time we were on a show in the UK, and there was a bit where I sang, and I just sounded awful. I'd kind of worked myself up over it, and was just too nervous, and I just sounded really not good, and it played on my mind afterwards for ages, because in like rehearsals and stuff I'd done it fine, and then when it came to the actual thing on camera, it just wasn't good, and I think even standing on stage used to make me really nervous, and I don't know, I think you can learn to kind of turn your nerves into something else, and you can kind of control them a bit more. I don't know, I think I learned from that experience, because it was kind of any natural confidence that I had was kind of, it used to be taken over by nerves, and now I've learned a bit more how to control them, and now it's just different. It's more excitement before stage than it is nerves. So I'm glad it happened, because it was a good experience for me to have, I think. I think looking back, our approach to the second album was probably a little bit naive, but I don't think that was necessarily a bad thing for us. I think a lot of kind of groups and artists kind of rip their hair out for 5 years trying to make a second album, and then in the end they have kind of overthought it and ends up being something not very good or completely different. And I think we were just really focused on making a good record and something that the fans would like, and You know, it's kind of weird because when you go in, you don't consciously go into the studio and kind of say we're gonna write a number one album. I think you just write each song as its own thing and just kind of try and make them good, and then you have a collection and try and pick things that kind of work together, and just trying to make each one as good as it can be. And I think that's just kind of what we've done with the albums always, is that, you know, we just kind of wanted them to be good and wanted the fans to like them. And I know obviously you don't write an album and try and make it bad, but I think we just didn't overthink it, which was a good thing. I think we felt the expectation around the second album more during the actual week of release. I think by then you've worked so hard on it, you just want people to hear it and say they think it's wicked. You want to hear their opinions, and then in the few days before you get the chart position, it's only natural to want to see where it'll land. And I think maybe then you kind of start thinking about the number one, but not until. I think when it first comes out, you're so nervous about putting it out in the first place. 'Cause I think if you're putting yourself out there in any way, like if you're a writer and you write something and have people read it, or you're an artist and you paint something and you let people see it, it's kind of putting whatever, it's just your work and you're kind of putting yourself out there a bit. So I think you just want people to like it, first of all. I think first of all you want people to not hate it, and then if people don't hate it, you want them to like it, and then if people like it, you're like, ugh. And then if it starts going a bit higher, then you maybe start thinking about where it charts. But I think originally you just want people to not hate it. We have a habit of delivering the most amazing news at the most ordinary times. I think I knew that the album was doing really well, the second one, in the States on its week of release, and there was a good chance that we might go number one again. And I think that week we'd had a couple of days off, and we'd just finished a New York trip, and I was still there. And I'd been on a bike ride, and I was returning a bike I'd rented to the shop, and then I got a call saying that we were number one. And I think I didn't really hear it properly because I had a man shouting at me because I was holding the bike wrong and the chain had fallen off, and it was a bit hectic. And then I put the phone down, gave the bike back, and then I was like, sick. Then it hit me. One of the best parts about being on the road that I love is the chance to travel and see all different places. I know sometimes it can be frustrating if we're obviously away from home or kind of stuck in hotels sometimes. I think if you kind of step back from it all and reflect on what my job, if you can call it a job, allows me to do in terms of traveling and stuff, I'm just incredibly lucky. I get to meet a lot of interesting people and people from different parts of the world, and traveling is something that I always wanted to do when I was younger. So although I might be doing it a little bit differently to walking around with a backpack on my shoulders, it's still traveling, and I still get to see amazing places and do really cool stuff that when I was 16 I never thought I'd get to do. So it's the road's fun, and very kind of grateful to be able to kind of see so many cool places. I think the thing with when we went to Ghana was you see a lot of the tapes of when people go on TV, same like the thing that we made, and you get the gist of it, but you can't kind of convey what it is in 3 minutes on screen. I think you can show people being unwell and you can show people dying and stuff, but I think you don't really understand it until you go. It's like the thing that triggers the different emotion is that it's like all your senses are taken over by by kind of what's going on. It's like the smells, and it's like smoky in it. If you're like watching it on TV, you don't experience the fact that you're walking through where people live, and like your eyes hurt from the smoke, and it stinks, and it's really hot, and it's just not where people should be living when we're kind of, other people live completely contrasting to that. And I think the thing that really made us think about it was we'd go in there and it'd be like a really hard day and it was horrible, and then we got to go back to our hotel and have a shower and then get in bed and have food and stuff. And I think when you kind of sit and think about it as people do that for a day and then sleep in like a tent on the floor and then get up and have to do it all over again, is the bit that kind of hits you the hardest. I think that trip hit me really hard. I think it did with all of us. You can't really express the mixture of emotions that kind of come up with that. It's just the ultimate sense of perspective, and you just get kind of, your vision just gets wider. And I think it was such a massive contrast to the environments that we were in and what was going on with One Direction at the time. And I just think it's impossible to go to somewhere like that and not come away thinking. And you just kind of have to think anything that you kind of have a problem with, or like things that you complain about, is just not even close to what different people go through. And, obviously people who are not in poverty can have serious problems as well. Everything's kind of relative. But when people have difficulties, I think it can kind of mask their judgment, and you can get like a smoky mind about what real problems are. And I just think it's something that I'll never forget, like things I saw and what it kind of represents. And I think it's important that you have experiences like that with the position that we're in at the moment. I think we're lucky enough to see things like that and learn from them. And I think we're also lucky that we're in a position where you can at least try and make a difference. And even if it's a small difference, I think a big difference is made up by a lot of little differences. I think we learned quite quickly that not everything you read about relationships or anything in the media is necessarily true. I think I'm also like quite accepting of the fact that if one of us has a new relationship that might be of interest to people who like follow the band and stuff, I think gossip is natural. I think it's kind of, people have always gossiped, and so I get it. I kind of get why it gets attention and why it's interesting. To a degree, you have to kind of just think it comes with it, and it's not really, if you complain about it, it doesn't really change anything. So, it's kind of fine. Just kind of get on with it. I think it's important that you kind of remember that the lifestyle and the job kind of isn't like normal. I think when you start to think that everything around you is normal, that's when you kind of lose sight of kind of who you are. And I think it's nice to be able to kind of take a step back from it and see it for what it is, and not let it kind of take over you. And I think that's why, even though you can't really say it's a job, I like seeing it as going to work, because then when I'm not working, I just like kind of hanging out, seeing my friends. But I think when you like going on stage and stuff, when you come off, you kind of always need a couple of hours to like unwind. Because I think if you don't, I think that's when people lose it. Is you kind of do a show and it's so kind of hyped up, and then you come home and then you just go to bed, and then you get up and then you do it again, and it just becomes like that is kind of everything. And I think it's a little hard to translate. I think that's when people kind of lose it in a sense is when the lines get blurred between where the kind of unusual stuff becomes normal to them, and then I think that's when you kind of expect it, and I think that's when you kind of get into trouble. It was fun making the film. It was a really different experience for us. We were used to kind of cameras being around and stuff from like X Factor and stuff. So it was enjoyable to. It wasn't like it wasn't too weird. It was just nice to see people kind of enjoy it. I think when we went to the premiere and we kind of watched it in the thing, it was nice to kind of see which bits like people found funny and which bits they kind of went quiet at and kind of were listening to stuff. And it's just cool to kind of be on screen and kind of, especially if there's bits where you think it's completely normal and then everyone else finds it really funny. It's like cool to just see people enjoying it, I think. So that was nice. And it was rare. I think everyone who's kind of worked on the project came to kind of see it, and I think it was nice to kind of step back and see kind of how far we'd come from the start. So that was really nice. I think when I first saw the stage for the stadium tour, it completely it actually took my breath away for a minute. I'd like been told that it was big, and then when we saw it for the first time, it was just so much kind of more extravagant than I'd imagined it was. You can kind of see something like that and get really excited about it. I think when you see the stage, you can't help but kind of imagine the shows straight away. You kind of think, right, I'm going to be there, and then I'm going to be over there. I'm going to look tiny, but I'm going to be over there. And I think it's just cool to kind of think that it's ours. It's funny to kind of look at something that big and think that that's part of our show. And it's nice that there's kind of those surprises that you can still be completely taken aback by. And I think it's stuff like that that kind of makes me realise that it still hasn't become normal to me. And I hope it never does, because I like that it's like that. This tour is an exciting one for us, because it's just a number of countries that we're going to visit, as well as the sheer size of the stadiums is pretty incredible. And with us all being involved in the songwriting a bit more, it felt like much more of a personal statement. So it was important that people enjoyed listening to the album, and I think for us it felt like there was more pressure on that record for it to succeed, because it was just more of a direct representation of all five of us. I feel like One Direction is a 1 in a million opportunity, and in some ways it's been like a unique thing to have to learn to kind of understand it, because there's no, like when you're going through school, there's no like lessons on how to kind of deal with it all, and there's no like class that you can take, and it's like completely crazy at times, but there's always going to be us five people who kind of went through it together and kind of understand what each other have kind of been through. And I'm extremely grateful for the opportunities that the band has kind of created. And people have some very real like problems to deal with in life, and there are certainly jobs that are very demanding and often badly rewarded. And so in comparison, when I think about it, I don't really have much to moan about. I can't really complain. I'm incredibly lucky that I've had this opportunity and that this has all kind of happened to me. I think it's amazing I just feel lucky to be involved in it, and in the grand scheme of things, it makes me feel like I don't have much to complain about, and I just feel really lucky.